Hi, I'm Josh Farrell, Wine Director for Wine Express, and I have a very special guest with me today, Michael Twelfthtree. He's the proprietor and founder of Two Hands Winery in Australia. Two Hands is a winery that produces primarily Shiraz and has just captured such a wide audience of fans and enthusiasts over the years. It just seems that vintage after vintage, they produce these wines that everybody loves, from consumers to critics to anybody who knows about wine. The wines end up on the top 100 lists year after year, and they do an extraordinary job. And I guess the first question I want to ask my guest is, what's your secret, Michael?
Look, to me, it's not a secret. It's actually common sense. What we do is, I really see it's being a two-part to our success, and the quality and the consistency. Is that both my winemaker and I are perfectionists. That's the number one point, and that we really strive and we push each other incredibly hard. Where we really make a difference with our winemaking is that we make all of our decisions based on the quality of the fruit in the vineyard. And so Matt and I, my winemaker's been with me 9.5 years, we walk into every vineyard, when we walk up and down every row, and we taste the fruit. And we make all of our picking decisions purely based on the flavours in the vineyard. I do not care for any chemical analysis whatsoever. I don't care potential alcohol, acids, anything. That doesn't interest me. To me, that I want to bring the flavour from the vineyard into the bottle and then into the consumer's mouths. And we do that by making an informed decision, and I spend hours and hours and hours. I get up 5 o'clock in the morning, I drive to the vineyards, we walk up and down and up and down and up and down. We never would actually analyse, we never even, it's just all flavour, everything that goes in my mouth. Matt and I believe a vineyard has got 3 days from underripe to overripe, and you can catch that absolute essence of the vineyard, and we will make a decision when we think the fruit is at its richest, most roundest, the tannins are ripe and solid, and we will get that vineyard picked within the next 12 hours.
And you catch it because you're there tasting every day, and so when you hit that moment, you say, okay, this is it. Right?
Sometimes you just walk in and it's quite magical. You'll be looking at a vineyard, because to me every vineyard has a ripening curve. Mm-hmm. And every vintage, the ripening curve of every vineyard is completely different. So you set the vineyard up before harvest by looking at the leaf to bunch ratio. You're counting how many bunches there, how many leaves there are. You're working with the grower to really manicure the vine to get beautiful balanced fruit. And then you sit back, and then you never make a knee-jerk reaction, because you're always looking for tannin ripeness. To me, the number one key element in a wine is the quality of the tannins. The tannin must be polished. Mm-hmm. The way I taste a wine is that you must have the acid is like the train tracks, the fruit is like the train coming into the station, and then the tannins are the brakes on the train. And the three components I always analyse wine when I taste is that a wine must have a start, it must have a middle, and what you pay for when you're buying a quality wine is the finish. And it's very hard to make those three elements, the acidity, the fruit, and the tannin. And if you can get those three things to finish perfectly together, you get a seamlessness and a texture and a mouthfeel across the palate. And that's where the silkiness of a great wine comes from.
I love that train analogy. That's great. Well, the wine we're tasting today is the Two Hands Angel Share 2009.
And what I wanted to do is I just grabbed a bottle of lilies to let everybody know the other secret to our success, I believe, is the fact that we taste every barrel in the winery. So I get back from this trip on Friday. As of next Monday, I have 1,500 barrels in 6 weeks to taste. Matt and I go through, we taste every barrel in the winery completely blind. We go into a room that I've designed specifically for the tasting. There's 20 glasses on one side, 20 on the other. I have no idea whether it's Grenache, Mataro, Cabernet. I have no idea if it's Shiraz from Heathcote, Langhorne Creek, McLaren, Vale, Barossa Valley, Pathaway. I write a tasting note. I give every barrel a score between A+ and D. And Matt and I then go through and confer. And we've been doing it, it's like riding a bike. Out of 20 wines, we can agree quite often on 20 scores. And we look at each other, it's a little eerie. But really, this is the classification here.
Right, and it's basically the same wine. In other words, all the grapes come from the same place. But you determine which one goes into the lilies versus which one goes into the angel share based on these blind tastings.
Correct. And so we never really know the volume of the wines that we're going to make, because to us, with the consistency of our wine is really why we've been so well received in the marketplace. We haven't really hit the button and started making huge production volumes. In a vintage like 2008, which is an incredibly difficult vintage, I'd have classified 37% of my total production, because to me, the consumer, a lot of wineries come and a lot of wineries go, but the ones that can have longevity in the wine industry, that is really rarefied air. And from day one,
consistency is so challenging.
So really what it is anything that gets really an A to A minus goes into the lilies, anything that gets B to B plus goes in angel share, anything below that score is moved out and sold on the bulk market.
Well, B to B plus is pretty good to me. I can't wait to taste this. The aromas are amazing. I'm getting all these berries, all this spice.
It's classic McLaren Vale, and what I love about McLaren Vale is McLaren Vale aromatic should be coffee, chocolate and mocha. There should be always a touch of peppermint in there. The wine should be very juicy and it should be very purpley fruit. Whenever I taste a wine, I look at wines very simplistically in that they're red fruit, purple fruit and black fruit, and McLaren Vale to me is the absolute perfect wine for plums and really kind of purplier fruit. It doesn't really go into a taro or licorice or what we see in the Barossa, which is a darker fruit flavour.
But what's also so nice about this is the suppleness of the wine and the integration of all the flavors and the tannins. Obviously 09, it's a young wine, but all that fruit is there, and the tannins are just kind of surrounding them, but they're not muscling them.
The other thing is the oak regime that we use, and that I only use 10% new oak in all of our wines, and that oak has all been seasoned with my declassified wine for 6 months. So the one thing I always pride myself on with my wines is that they're not like drinking Maker's Mark. And I think that that's something where I think a lot of producers in the new world have kind of got oak handling wrong. Oak isn't a flavour enhancer, it's an oxidative tool. The reason we put our wine in oak is to let them soften, and I would prefer to have a wine like this which is more primary fruit based. My vision for Angel Share is that it's cellarable, fond release, maybe 5 or 6 years. That's why it's under screw cap, because I want to keep that lovely primary, the freshness of the fruit. And if it sells a little bit longer than that, fantastic. But to me, this wine is drinking superbly today. It's a wine that I find a lot of complexity in and a lot of drinkability, because unless you can drink, it's 10 o'clock here on a Monday morning and I've already had a couple of tastes, and I'm drawn to drinking it. And I've only just had breakfast, I've just had a coffee, but this wine to me, I'm really just love the flavours. And to me, I'm a big believer in consumption of the wine when the emptiest bottle at the dinner party is the best wine of the night. I don't care what the reviewers gave it, but to me, really, when you look at it, I've opened great wines of the world for my friends, and then you've got a great wine of the world and you go to the end of the dinner party and it's hardly been touched, and there's a little other wine down the end and everybody drank it in 10 minutes. Well, who cares what got 94 or 98 or whatever?
Well, whether we taste this at 11 in the morning or 11 p.m. at night, I'm sure it's going to taste just as outstanding.
We're looking at a great vintage. 09 is a fabulous vintage, and we've got 2010 in the wings, which is, I think, mostly one of our best vintages to date. It's up there with 2005, and then we've got a difficult vintage in the winery at the moment, 2011. We'll just means we'll work a little bit harder, we'll classify a little bit more, make sure that the consumer is always getting a great wine for a fair price.
That's great.
Cool.
Appreciate you coming, Mike.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks,
Thank
mate.
you.